So the first tenet, reserve 50% of the increases in state revenues for education. Now this isn't a new idea. I wasn't the first one to come up with it, but, and as a matter of fact, some of the bills that have been passed into the legislature as part of the QEC recommendations include this. So that's great. Tenet 2, shift the local levy collection to state collection. Set all districts at 24% and get rid of grandfathering, but fit that within the existing $3.60 state taxing authority. So real quick further explanation on that. The state has $3.60 per thousand of taxing authority. Currently, they're collecting about $2 of that and dedicating that to K-12 resources, leaving about $1.60 that they don't currently collect. If you look across the state, the levy rates for local M&O levies, they vary widely, but on average, if we squeezed them into this $1.60 remaining, the average across the state savings would be 60 cents per thousand. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a lot. There are 3 options within levy tenet number 2 to ensure that we are looking at all the options, or at least 3 of the options. And the person who gave me some specific input about why I needed to do that, I'll talk about after I get done with all 5 tenets. Number 3, use the increase in bonding capacity realized by the increase in state revenues, reserve that for K-12 school construction. So 2261, one of the elements that it implements is reduced class size. It doesn't take a whole lot of math to realize that if you reduce class size, you're going to need more classrooms. Nowhere in 2261 does it talk about where the funding for those classrooms are going to come from. If the state is requiring and creating a basic education system that is funding a reduced class size, they ought to fund additional facilities to accommodate that. Number 4, fund the neediest students first. Now there are a couple of reasons why that's a good idea. And what I mean by that is there are programs such as LAP, such as ELL, such as full-day kindergarten. There are some programs that target kids who have the greatest need. And it's a good investment because when you invest in those kids who have that need, you end up paying less later because you're helping educate them now and you're getting them ready to be better learners, or you're addressing some of their learning issues early. Now, when you have this new 2261 reform package, it does all sorts of things. And in the Funding Formula Technical Working Group, of which I was a member, we categorized it into 19 different areas. Now, you can either do all of them equally at once, you can do some front-loaded and kind of taper off, you can do some back-loaded. Tenet 4 is saying, fund those neediest students first, so front-load the programs that are going to help them. And Tenet 5 is to reform local levies. And in Tenet 2, remember, we shifted the 24% to state collection and took that away. I didn't say that because I didn't want everybody to start throwing things at me. Because in Tenet 5, we fixed that. Tenet 5, reform local levies to 10% across the board, or $1 per thousand of assessed value, whichever is more. Now, for those of you who have been following the kind of ongoing debate in WASA and perhaps WASA, there are many high assessed value districts that their communities demand more of an investment. And there's a constant struggle between, and we heard it earlier today, between, okay, do we raise the levy lid for everybody and then create this basically vacuum where the state can say, oh, just fill that up with your local money and we won't have to fund as much. Tenet 5 addresses those by compromising between the need for additional funds for those high assessed values and the demand that those communities put on them, and ensuring that the levy lid is kept low to prevent the legislature from saying, you have plenty of room there in your local levy lid to raise money. So, those are the 5 tenets. As I mentioned, I'm going to have a question and answer period tomorrow morning. I know hopefully many of you are going to be on the Hill talking to your legislators about this. As I mentioned, I'll have handouts available and the printouts. And I want to say also that if there are ideas for input, if you want to rant about this idea, if you want to provide a better idea, I want to hear from you, and so do your legislators. But my email address is education@iseminger.com. The education is easy to spell, the Iseminger not so much, but you can find me. I want to hear from you, and so do your local legislators. I've gotten a lot of good feedback, and I'm eager to hear from you, and please make long-term funding of K-12 education a priority. We owe it to our students, we owe it to our kids, and if we don't, we will have to say, gee, I wish we would have done that. And the legislators, of course, they get to go off and say, well, but I passed my bill. Let's pass our bill. Thank you.